Hi, everyone. So let's talk about more intro to ecology. Today is part 2, where we are going to focus on specifically focusing on the different levels, our different levels of complexity as we're talking about organisms up through ecosystems. All right, so again, remember when we're talking about ecology, we're talking about the study of how living things interact with their environments. And so when we talk about ecology, we can start with the most very basic level, talking about the individual all the way up through the biosphere. So let's take a minute and go through each one of those levels. Our first level is the individual, right? Lowest level of organization, we're talking about one organism by itself. So we're talking about one organism. If we were studying something at the individual level, we might be tracking an elk through its range. We might be looking at samples of the elk to look at its health, maybe tranquilizing the elk to take different measurements and health measurements. Again, so individual, we're looking at one individual organism. The next level up from that is when we look at that organism and all of the other individuals of the same species that live in the same geographic location in the same place as that species. So in this example, we have that not only the elk, but all the other elk that live inside their herd in their range within a certain ecosystem. If we were studying ecology at a population level, we would be tracking the numbers. So we would be maybe estimating the population size of the herd, tracking the increase or decrease of the population over time, looking at how many males or females, the age ranges. We might be tracking their migration route to see where they're going. So again, population, we're looking at the individuals of the same species within a certain area. Next, if we take those populations of all of those different species that live in an area, we come into a community. So a community is all the different populations of different species that live in one area, that makes up our community. Now, these are interacting populations that all occupy the same area at the same time. So if we were looking at a community, if we were studying a community level, might be looking at the elk, bobcats, rabbits, tree, plants, all the different, the birds, all the different organisms, the living things within that area at that same time. If we were studying ecology at a community level, we would be looking for symbiotic relationships. We would be tracking predator and prey populations to see how they balance one another out. And we would be looking for examples of interspecies competition, right? So we are looking at the relationships between those living things in that area. If we take those communities and we then bring in all of the abiotic factors, the non-living factors, now we're talking about an ecosystem. So an ecosystem is our biotic factors, right? Our community, where now we're going to look at all the abiotic factors as well. So if we were studying ecology at an ecosystem level, we're going to look at the rainfall and see how the rainfall affects the different species that live there. Or we're going to look at how different populations are affecting, or how the plant growth is affecting the soil after a wildfire. We're going to be looking a lot of the time, we look at climate, right? So when we study climate or climate change, we're looking at the ecosystem level, seeing how living things are affected by things like climate, amount of sunlight, rainfall, all of those abiotic factors. If we take all of those ecosystems and we group them up by similar characteristics, we get into the category of biomes. So biomes are large ecosystems or groups of ecosystems that share certain characteristics. So, for example, all the deserts around the world. Each one is unique, but they have some shared characteristics that puts them in the category of deserts. freshwater ecosystems, ocean ecosystem, temperate forests, rainforests. While each individual one all has their unique species, they have some shared characteristics, so we put them all within the same biome. The very last thing is if we take all those biomes, if we look at the area of the earth, the lowest area in which organisms can survive to the highest level at which organisms can survive, we call that the biosphere. And that is all the layer of the earth, the part of the earth in which organisms can exist. We wanted to do some practice on this. Let's go ahead and take some look here. If we have here this lynx and this lynx interacting, of course, with this rabbit, right? What type of interaction do we here have? Do we have an individual interaction? We're looking at one organism. Do we have a population where we're looking at one species? Are we talking about a community, an ecosystem, a biome, or a biosphere? In this case, because we're talking about two sets of organisms, they're interacting with one another, we are talking about a community level of interaction. If we're going to look at, for example, if we were studying the bison, population in the American Plains or someplace like Yellowstone National Park, and if we were tracking those bison, what type of interaction are we studying? If you said we are studying population, you would be correct. Let's look here. So if we were to go to Mount Hood and look at all of the boreal forest, grassy plains, rivers, and ponds that surround it in this geographic region, what are we talking about? If you said ecosystem, because we're looking at all the living and non-living things, you would be correct. If you are looking for further information, you want to go a little bit deeper, and you want to look a little bit more on how some of these organisms respond to their environments, I recommend this Biology Essentials from Bozeman on YouTube, Response to External Environments. All right, guys, that's it for Intro to Ecology Part 2. I hope that you have picked up something, learned some new content, and are ready to move on with your ecology learning. Bye.